2.
Here we go.
Greetings and welcome to a fantastic and informative show about one of my all-time favorite topics, and that is the Founders Academy Public Charter School located in Manchester, New Hampshire. My name is Maureen Mooney, and not only am I a resident here in town, but I'm also the Dean of the Founders Academy and have been since 2015. Prior to that, I was the Dean of Faculty for a year. So a subject very near and dear to my heart, and I have with me today 2 guests who know an incredible amount about the Founders Academy. One is Mrs. Patty Humphrey, who is a trustee currently of the school, but a founder of the school as well. My second guest is Mr. Greg VanEwyk, who is a U.S. history teacher at the school and the former chairman of the Humanities Department at Founders. At the end of this half hour, you'll hear a great overview as to everything you need to know about a great school that came to New Hampshire in 2014. We'll also talk about what is a charter school? Where are they? What makes them unique? Are they public? All of those topics in the next half of an hour with our guests, Mrs. Patty Humphrey, Mr. Greg VanEwyk. So with that introduction, I'm going to start with our first question, very basic but very interesting to know, and that is, what is a charter school? So Mrs. Humphrey, welcome. And
thank you, Maureen. And thank you for being a great dean to the Founders Academy, our favorite subject, I believe.
Thank you.
So a charter school is a public school that's been created through a process that's separate from the ordinary public school system. And in exchange for being able to have its own curriculum created by its mission and its charter, it exists at a lesser amount of tuition than regular public schools. It receives only the state portion of public school tuition and not the town portion. And there are many, many different kinds of charter schools. Anyone can start a charter school and go through the process, get it approved by the State Board of Education. It's probably a 2 to 3 year process, and with any wonderful idea that they have. So there you go.
That's great. Now tell me, how did charter schools come to New Hampshire? How did they get started here in New Hampshire?
Well, there was a state senator named Jim Rubens who decided to create a charter school law, and that was in 1995. And he took advice from a woman named Susan Hollins, who was the first person who really worked specifically in the charter school movement to make the law actually workable. And there had to be a lot of compromises made because not everybody was in favor of charter schools. And so they started rather slowly, but eventually they took up speed, and now we have about 26 or 27 charter schools in the state.
Amazing. And 3 more, I believe, opening in the fall. So charter
Yes.
schools are here, there, and everywhere. Could you highlight a few in New Hampshire and where they're located too?
Well, one of our really star charter schools is called Academy for Science and Design.
Yes.
And that was started 10 years ago. And it was, in fact, its first location was in Merrimack. And it is a STEM school. And it is Newsweek listed as the foremost school in New Hampshire. And it also has won the Blue Ribbon Prize from the U.S. Department of Education, which gives prizes to 250 high schools in the country, and the Academy for Science and Design is one of those schools.
It's amazing.
So it operates on a tiny budget. There is probably no other school of its quality in the whole country that operates on such a low budget, but they do miraculous things at that school, all with being creative and innovative in the way they approach everything.
They do a great job. Actually, several students go to that school from Merrimack. So we have several students
yes.
that commute down there.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. I know that charter schools, and I come into contact with this as well, there are a lot of misconceptions about charter schools out there. For example, several times people will come to visit us at Founders, and one of their first questions is, so what's the tuition here? Could you tell our viewers about some of the misconceptions that charter schools have?
Well, that certainly is the primary one. The marvelous news is that these wonderful schools, there are art schools, there are science schools, there are creative project schools, there are Montessori schools, there's our school, which is a Liberty school. There's huge choice, and they're free and open to every student in New Hampshire. And so that is the first misconception, is that you have to pay. Another misconception about charter schools is that they are selective in terms of their choice of enrollment, and that's not so. By law, charter schools take students on a first-come, first-served basis. And if the school fills up, then a lottery is formed for any students for which there might be openings later on.
So much to know about public charter schools in New Hampshire.
Right.
Where would be a good resource to go, say online or in Concord?
Let's see, Maureen. I can't think about that. There's a charter school organization called the Alliance, the Public Charter Schools, New Hampshire Alliance for Public Charter Schools, and their website is www.nhcharterschools.org. And that has the lists of every charter school in the state, where they are. It has the charters of every charter school, so that if you're interested in starting a school, you can read some of these charters. You can see how you present your information to the state board as you start forming your own ideas. And they list all the news nationally about charter schools, and locally. They follow the legislature and any laws that may come up for or against charter schools, always encouraging the pro side.
Right.
Yes.
And charter schools, like anything else, have their challenges, certainly. Funding, I think you'd agree with me, is probably its biggest challenge.
Well, I would agree with you, Maureen. Strangely enough.
That's right.
Because we receive about 1/3 of what regular public schools receive. That means that we cannot offer everything that a regular public school offers. For instance, if we have a high school, it probably will not have a football team, for instance. But it is amazing how creative you can be with what you do have. And one of our reasons for existing is to show that we can do more with less. So we wouldn't want to have as much, but we do want to have a consistently proportionate amount, I would say.
Exactly. So much there. Offering a school of choice. Parents can determine whether or not that's where they'd like to go with their students, and students in on that decision as well. It's just such a great benefit to New Hampshire. You yourself have been so involved, not only in the Founders Academy Public Charter School, but also with charter schools in general in New Hampshire. Would you mind just saying a little bit to our viewers about what your involvement has been, both with Founders and charter schools?
Well, when the charter school law first came about, my husband said to me, let's start charter schools in New Hampshire. That will be our gift to the state. And he couldn't have asked a better person, if I do say so myself.
Yes.
I thought it was a terrific idea, and I went with it. And so we started a little foundation, and we hired Susan Hollins, who had been a school superintendent and was very knowledgeable about public education. And really, she did a lot of the early work, encouraging people that came to us. We had seminars all over the state just saying, here we are, here's what charter schools are. If you have any ideas, come to us and we'll help you through the process. So that's how we got started. Then it became kind of fun to think about starting a school or two myself. And so I did a little bit of that too. But most of the schools have been started with some group or person that had an idea they were passionate about, that wanted to do education in a somewhat different way than the standard approach. And so we have a huge variety of charter schools. I'm very, very proud of that. There's no cookie cutter charter schools here. Everyone is started by somebody who had a dream.
Well, on behalf of all of the students who have truly benefited from charter schools in New Hampshire, thank you for all you've done. Your involvement and your generosity has been unmatched. Let's switch now to Founders, knowing that background about charter schools in New Hampshire, the Founders Academy. Now, you, Patty, being a founder of Founders Academy, what is the mission and how did it get started?
So I watch television and I see these men on the street interviews, who was the first president of the United States, that kind of thing, and people not knowing. And I was hearing that the big educational testing companies were eliminating American history from their tests, and therefore the schools weren't even interested in teaching it because they wanted high marks on their tests, and history didn't count anymore. And that we were developing citizens that didn't know anything about our country, and that in fact we could probably lose our liberty, lose our democracy, lose our country if something weren't done. So that's what was the impetus of getting started.
Oh, such a great mission. And one reason why I got involved too is because of that mission, how important it is to have a school emphasizing character building, history, leadership, and liberty. So Mr. VanEwyk, as a teacher at Founders Academy, tell me, what's your general overview of Founders? What would you say to someone who had never come into contact with Founders Academy before?
So thank you for having me here today. Happy to be with you and Patty. And I'll add on to what she said about charter schools in general and the Founders Academy. She had this fear that history was kind of going away. And I'll tell you, I saw that myself too. I had been in public schools in 2 states, both in New Hampshire and in Georgia, and had seen this kind of nationwide movement that was emphasizing math and English, and I think those are both very important subject areas, but it resulted also in a loss in the value of history.
Right.
And certainly in the United States, where our citizens are participants in our government, and it is based on citizens having information. It is just vitally important, I think, that we do focus on character and on history so that our children today, who will be participants in democracy in the next generation, will be able to participate in an informed way.
Exactly.
So yes, I think that the Founders Academy is definitely a step in the right direction, not to mention giving families, the kids with their parents, an opportunity to look and see what kind of education do I want my students to have, and charter schools in general allow that to happen as well.
Exactly. Now, the Founders Academy, just so our viewers know, goes from grades 6 through 12. Opening up the 12th grade this year. It's our 5th year of existence, which is amazing. It's a celebratory year. Our high school is now complete. In terms of general facts about Founders, how many communities send children to Founders?
So we have currently, I think, 24 communities, towns around New Hampshire that are currently represented at the Founders Academy. And again, another misconception maybe about charter schools is who is allowed to attend each one. And they're open to every child who lives in the state of New Hampshire.
Yes.
And that allows us to serve so many different communities.
So it's amazing that who can attend, and that is not just people who live in Manchester,
right,
but anyone in New Hampshire can attend for free, as with any other public school.
Indeed.
So now leadership is a huge theme at Founders Academy. The founders were instrumental in making that foremost, always letting the students take lead, learn to be leaders. How has that been done throughout the curriculum at Founders?
Sure. So one of the really fascinating things about charter schools is the freedom that is allowed for teachers and even for student participation in developing the curriculum at the school, which we even allow students to give their input on what our classes are going to be, what the electives are going to be, and all of those types of things. In addition to that, we encourage our students to participate in other aspects of forming our school, and especially in the past few years as it's been new. So we have a student senate at the school where the students are involved in making decisions. And as you well know, Maureen, they've made proposals to you about the
Yes.
student handbook, the code
Always
of
happy to get
conduct,
those, yep.
the dress code even.
Yes.
And the students actually then are participating in forming how the school is run and creating the culture at the school,
Yeah.
and thereby learning leadership skills themselves as they go along.
That's great.
And in addition, we get the students working outside of the school
Yes.
as much as we can as well. And we've taken students to New York for an appearance on Fox and Friends. We've also asked students to testify to the New Hampshire State Legislature on legislation, and those students actually successfully changed the law by one word, but a very important word in the state of New Hampshire, and I'll tell you more about that later.
Very good. Yeah, that was a very exciting time.
Indeed.
How about giving our viewers an overview of the curriculum, something that in the classroom and as the former chairman of the humanities department you had a big role in. You actually at one time chaired the curriculum committee.
Sure.
So just give an overview on that, starting with the name of the curriculum and what that entails.
Okay. So our curriculum is called the Founding Fathers Character and Leadership Curriculum. Okay? And so what we really want to do is we want to emphasize the values that America is based on in our curriculum. And then, of course, two of the things at our school, character development and leadership skill development. So one of the things that separates the Founders Academy from other public schools, probably more than anything else, is the emphasis on history. And I can remember the graduation requirements for history classes at other schools being 2.5 credits in 4 years of high
Right,
school, or
right.
maybe 3 credits. And at the Founders Academy, it was decided that the students would need 5 credits in history
Correct.
in order to successfully meet the requirements for graduation. And then in addition to that, the students are asked to take challenging courses in all of the other subject areas, and even the students are even asked to participate in a daily class called Roundtable, which is part of the curriculum. It is a real class rather than a general homeroom or advisory type class where we just do announcements and take attendance, where the students participate in discussion about all kinds of subject areas, many times things that they themselves are interested in discussing with their teachers and fellow students.
That's great. One of the themes, too, in relation to the school's mission is character building. How is that emphasized at Founders?
Well, upon the school opening, the students actually participated in the creation of our school's code of conduct.
Okay.
Okay, and so there's a list of things that we expect our students to be. These oftentimes are reviewed in roundtable classes, and every classroom in the school has these posted in the school, and they're referenced by the teachers, by the administration, and as time has gone on, even often referenced by the students in their expectations for behavior around the school. And we know behavior in any school setting, especially any public school, is a challenge for teachers and for administrators.
Sure.
But we give the students this sense of ownership of their own behavior, their own expectations for conduct, and we emphasize how important it is for those positive character traits to be developed. And then we also grade students. All of the
Right.
teachers give students grades,
Right.
character grades at the end of every quarter. And that gives not only the students some feedback on what they could do to improve their own character development, but the parents as well, always working in conjunction with parents. And the students then are able to kind of reflect on themselves, and the teachers are as well. And the hope is that we create an atmosphere there where everybody is working together towards a common goal, and doing so in a way that promotes kindness and understanding. And I would say it's eliminated many of the problems that I've seen at other public schools or that you might hear about throughout the country.
Great to hear. It's such a special place.
Indeed.
Why did?
Can I add to
Oh,
that?
sure.
The reason that we have emphasized character so much is laid down by the founders. Every single one of them that you read has a comment, hundreds of comments, on the only way that we can keep the republic that they created
Right.
is with citizens who are virtuous. That's the word that they use.
Exactly.
And I could read 100 quotes. Let me just read one from Ben Franklin. Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become more corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. And I could read, I have a list here of many, many others, from John Adams, from George Washington, from Thomas Jefferson, from all of them. So the challenge that they set down for us is how to keep this republic. As Franklin said, we have created a republic if you can keep it. And so I took up that challenge, and we all have taken up that challenge. And so the center of the school has to be the character of the students. And I think that although in a world where that's kind of an old-fashioned concept, it's hard to get buy-in from everybody. I think we are more and more succeeding in doing so. And not only do we have this code of conduct in every classroom and refer to it many times, but we're going to also be starting an effort where students themselves are dealing with the conduct of other students, not for the purpose of punishing, but for the purpose always of building character. And all our discipline is carried out in that manner.
Yeah.
And it's so neat to see that combination where students are involved in all of the aspects of developing character, and because they're involved in it, they're also developing their own skills in leadership. And I see that happen in the Senate all the time too, and that's one of the things we really try to do as well. And that was a great quote you shared, Patty. A weekly quote is another way that we try to emphasize character. Again, posted in every classroom, and the students and teachers discuss the quotation together, oftentimes similar to what Patty just read.
Now, our students read the primary documents.
Yes.
And that's a big reason why you came to Founders. But why else? Why did you decide to teach at Founders?
Well, I have to tell you, Maureen, before I started at Founders, I would have been in the group that you were talking about earlier that didn't know much about charter schools. I had heard of charter schools. I knew they existed, but I didn't know exactly what they were. And as I've continued to be involved and learn more and more, it's such a great idea and such a great opportunity for teachers and for students. I mean, one of the things that is often discussed in educational circles and politics and in policy is that we want to give teachers more freedom, and we want to give kids more freedom. And we talk about the Founders Academy as a charter school based on liberty, right, and government and history and all of that. And yet we have a educational system in which everything is determined for you before you even begin. And the Founders Academy changes that a little bit. It's really a step in the right direction for education, to give people choices and to give them opportunities. For me, to have the opportunity to really develop my own curriculum, to have a voice in developing the curriculum of the school, something that I had never even considered before. Master's degree in education, over a decade of experience, and here I'm learning I can actually teach what I think is important for the students, and the students can choose whether or not they think that's important as well. And if we're going to teach them about freedom, shouldn't we practice it as well?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And so, we've told this story before about hearing you discussing on a radio program about the Founders Academy and really trying to get the word out to
Right.
potential students. And I was listening, and I thought, wow, what an amazing opportunity this would offer, and got in touch with you. and I just knew I had to teach there. And we had met within a week of that, so it was really neat.
Amazing. You know, the school's website is more comprehensive than most schools. We have on there our curriculum, bios on our teachers, the mission statement, you know, an introductory message from myself where I talk about the mission and so on, clubs that are available, people who have been to our school. We have a list of distinguished guests. I would encourage everyone to go to thefoundersacademy.org and check it out. We've been told by numerous people that it goes above and beyond getting information out about what goes on in our buildings and in our classroom. Well, as I warned you both before we began, the time in the studio goes faster than any other place on earth. However, I do want to close with one thing. You had mentioned about the bill that some students went to Concord on that changed one word of a law, and maybe just conclude that story.
Okay, that'll be a good story.
We have about 30 seconds left.
Very good. A great story about students getting involved in the process of their own education and learning, you know, real life skills and leadership and all of that. So, John Stark, a New Hampshire revolutionary hero, he has a special holiday. And as the law was written for years, schools were supposed to celebrate this holiday with educational opportunities on the fourth Monday in April each year. And the students realized that the fourth Monday in April always falls on their spring break. And so how can we celebrate John Stark during spring break? We're not in session. And so they changed one word from fourth Monday to second Monday, went to the House, testified, went to the Senate, testified, and successfully got a bill through the legislature in New Hampshire. And when Governor Sununu found out about it, he said, I want to go to the school and I want to sign that bill into law with those students in a full school assembly, which he did. And it was a very proud moment for the students. And they can remember forever that they were a part of changing the law in the state of New Hampshire.
Very memorable day.
Indeed.
In fact, we've even memorialized the desk that Governor Sununu signed that bill on at the Founders Academy with a notice on it that says that the governor signed House Bill 91 on this day, on this desk in April of 2017.
Absolutely.
Patty Humphrey, Greg VanEwyk, thank you both so much. We could go on and on, but I encourage you to go to thefoundersacademy.org for more information. And we encourage you, there are many ways for members of the public to help out in all different ways. And if you've ever like to come for a visit, we'd love to have you. Thank you very much.